My sister Linda whispered, "Happy birthday, Mom," with the same fake smile she'd perfected for church photos, while her husband Paul counted the elderly guests like a vulture circling fresh roadkill. My 27-year-old son Jason leaned in and whispered, "Get your bag, we're leaving. Act like nothing's wrong." The champagne glass in my hand suddenly felt heavier than a sledgehammer. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. I thought Jason was being his usual overdramatic self. My son had always been protective, maybe too protective since his father died 3 years ago. But when he grabbed my elbow with white knuckles and steered me toward the exit, something cold settled in my stomach. This wasn't teenage anxiety. This was pure, adult fear. "What's wrong?" I whispered as we moved through the crowd of my mother's friends. She was 85 today, radiant in her pink dress, surrounded by women who'd known her for decades. The Riverside Community Center was decorated with streamers and balloons, and Mom's favorite big band music played softly in the background. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect, now that I thought about it. "Not here," Jason muttered, his hand still gripping my arm. "Just keep smiling and walking." I've seen that expression on my son's face exactly twice before. Once when he was 12 and caught his father cheating. Once when the doctors told us Dad's cancer had spread. Both times, my world fell apart within hours. So when Jason locked the car doors and turned to me with those same dark eyes, I knew my life was about to change again. "Mom, something's very, very wrong," he said, his voice steady but his hands shaking. "I need to tell you what I overheard." The party continued behind us through the community center's windows. My mother sat at the head table, cutting her birthday cake while everyone applauded. Linda was taking pictures, Paul was refilling drinks, and everything looked absolutely normal, which apparently was exactly the problem. "Jason, you're scaring me." "Good," he said grimly, "because what I heard scared the hell out of me." He pulled out his phone and showed me a voice recording. His thumb hovered over the play button. "I recorded this 20 minutes ago when I went to get your purse from Linda's car. They were in the parking lot, and they thought everyone else was inside." They? Linda and Paul. The name hung in the air like a curse. My sister Linda, who'd organized this whole party, who'd insisted on handling all the arrangements, who'd been so helpful, so attentive to Mom's needs lately, the sister I'd trusted with everything. "Mom, before I play this, I need you to know that after we hear it, we're driving straight to the police station. No stops, no calls, no giving them a chance to explain. Whatever you hear, whatever they've done, we're reporting it tonight." I stared at my son's serious face and felt something shift inside me. The same feeling I'd had when I finally filed for divorce from his father. The moment when protecting yourself becomes more important than keeping the peace. "Play it." The voices were muffled but clear enough. Linda's voice. "She signed the papers this morning, didn't she?" Paul's voice. "Yep. Power of attorney is now officially yours. The old bat thinks she's just helping with Medicare paperwork." My blood went cold. Mom had mentioned signing some insurance documents Linda had brought over. She'd been so proud that her daughter was helping with the confusing paperwork. She'd trusted Linda completely. "The nursing home deposit goes through Monday," Paul continued. "Once she's in there, we can sell the house within 30 days. Market's hot right now. Should get at least $400,000. $400,000. Mom's house. The house where Linda and I grew up. The house Mom had sworn she'd never leave. "What if she fights the commitment?" Linda asked. "She won't have a choice. I've got Dr. Peterson lined up to say she's showing signs of dementia, unsafe to live alone. The paperwork's already filed." Dr. Peterson. Mom's doctor for 15 years. The man she trusted implicitly. Jason stopped the recording. We sat in silence, watching the party through the windows. My mother laughed at something her friend Dorothy said. She looked vibrant, sharp, completely alert, not like someone who needed to be committed. "There's more," Jason said quietly. "More? They're planning to drug her tonight. Something to make her confused, disoriented. Paul's got something in his jacket. They want to create an incident that justifies the emergency commitment." I felt like I was drowning in broad daylight. This wasn't just theft. This was kidnapping. This was destroying an old woman's life for money. "We have to go back," I said. "Mom." "No. We call the police first. She's still in there with them. What if they what? They're not going to hurt her in front of 50 witnesses, but if we go back now, they'll know we know. They'll disappear, destroy evidence, maybe accelerate their timeline. He was right, and I hated him for being right. But I also loved him for being smart enough to get us out before it was too late. How did you know to record them? Jason was quiet for a moment. Paul's been asking weird questions about Grandma's finances for months, and Linda's been visiting her constantly, bringing papers to sign. It felt predatory. Predatory. That was the perfect word. My sister had been circling our mother like a shark, and I'd been too trusting to see it. 10 minutes, Mom. We'll call 911, tell them everything, and let the police handle it. But right now, Grandma is safe because she's surrounded by people. The moment that party ends, he didn't need to finish. The moment the party ended, Mom would be alone with them. And by morning, she'd be in a nursing home, confused and drugged, signing away everything she owned. I looked back at the community center one more time. Through the windows, I could see Linda helping Mom open presents. The perfect daughter. The devoted caretaker. The loving sister who'd been planning to destroy our mother's life for months. Make the call, I said. But as Jason dialed 911, something else occurred to me. Something that made my hands shake with rage instead of fear. If they'd done this to Mom, what else had they been planning? The dispatcher's voice was calm and professional, completely at odds with the chaos in my head. 911, what's your emergency? I need to report elder abuse and fraud, Jason said, his voice steadier than mine would have been. It's happening right now. While Jason gave our location and explained the situation, I stared through the windshield at the community center. The party was still going strong, but now everything looked sinister. Every smile Linda gave Mom, every helpful gesture from Paul, every moment of this perfect celebration was really a performance to cover up their crime. Ma'am, are you there? The dispatcher was talking to me now. Jason had handed me the phone. Yes, I'm here. Can you confirm that your mother is currently safe? I watched Mom laughing with her friends. She appears to be, but they're planning to drug her tonight. We're sending officers to your location. Do not attempt to intervene until they arrive. Can you remain where you can observe the party? Yes. Good. Stay on the line. Jason and I sat in tense silence, watching our family through the windows like we were conducting surveillance. Which, I supposed, we were. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was spying on my own sister at my mother's birthday party. I can't believe Linda would do this, I whispered. Really? Jason looked at me with raised eyebrows. Because I can totally believe it. What's that supposed to mean? Mom, Aunt Linda has been asking about Grandma's money for years. Remember last Christmas when she wanted to know about the life insurance? Or when she suggested Grandma should simplify her finances? He was right. And I felt stupid for not seeing it. Linda had been planting seeds for months, maybe years. The caring daughter worried about Mom's safety. The helpful sister concerned about Mom's finances. The devoted family member who just wanted what was best. She's been setting this up for a long time, I said. The realization hitting me like a slap. Yeah, and Paul's been researching elder care facilities and property values. I caught him looking up nursing homes on his phone at Easter. Easter. That was 4 months ago. They'd been planning this since at least Easter, maybe longer. Every family dinner, every holiday visit, every concerned phone call had been part of their scheme. My phone buzzed. A text from Linda. Where did you go? Mom's asking for you. I showed Jason the message. He snorted. She's probably panicking. They need you there to make everything look normal. Another text. Jason too. Come back. The cake is amazing. Should I respond? Tell her we went to get something from the car. We'll be right back. I typed the lie, hating every word. But if Linda suspected we knew, she might accelerate whatever they had planned for tonight. Through the window, I could see Linda checking her phone, reading my message, then walking over to Paul. They had a quick conversation, and Paul nodded toward the parking lot. They were looking for us. They're getting nervous, Jason said. Good, let them squirm. As we watched, Paul walked outside and started toward the parking lot. He was trying to look casual, but his movements were too purposeful. He was definitely looking for us. Get down, Jason said, sliding low in his seat. We ducked below the windows as Paul walked past our car. He stopped, looked around, then pulled out his phone. Even from inside the car with the windows up, we could hear his voice raised in frustration. "They're not here," he said to whoever he was calling. "Yeah, I checked everywhere. Their car's here, but they're gone." He listened for a moment, then, "No, we stick to the plan. Maybe they just went for a walk. We'll proceed as scheduled." Proceeded as scheduled. My mother was about to be drugged and kidnapped, and they were talking about it like a business meeting. Paul headed back toward the building, and we sat up again. "Where are the police?" I asked. "It's only been 10 minutes, Mom." 10 minutes that felt like 10 hours. Every second Mom stayed in that party, she was closer to danger. Every moment Linda and Paul had to prepare was another moment they could cover their tracks or change their plan. "What if they decide to leave early?" I asked. "Then we follow them. But the police said not to intervene. I'm not going to let them take her." Jason looked at me seriously. "Mom, you realize this could get dangerous, right? People who steal from elderly relatives don't usually stop at theft. If they're willing to drug her and commit her against her will..." He didn't finish. But I knew what he meant. People who crossed those lines were capable of crossing others. If Linda and Paul felt cornered, if they thought we were going to ruin their plan, what would they do to protect themselves? "We're not going to let it get that far," I said with more confidence than I felt. Red and blue lights flashed in my rearview mirror. 2 police cars pulled into the parking lot, followed by a third. No sirens, which was smart. They didn't want to alert Linda and Paul that something was wrong. "Thank God," I breathed. The first officer approached our car. Jason rolled down the window. "Are you the callers?" "Yes, sir. I'm Jason Miller. This is my mother, Carol. I'm Officer Martinez. We need to hear that recording." Jason played the audio again. Officer Martinez listened without expression, but I saw his jaw tighten when Paul talked about drugging Mom. "Do you know what substance they're planning to use?" "No, but the man said he had something in his jacket." "And your mother is currently inside the building?" "Yes, she's the guest of honor. It's her 85th birthday party." Officer Martinez nodded. "Here's what we're going to do. 2 of my officers will enter the building and observe. They'll be dressed in plain clothes and will blend in with the guests. I need you 2 to go back inside and act normal. Don't do anything to alert the suspects that law enforcement is present. What if they try to give her something? My officers will intervene before that happens. But I need to stress this. Do not attempt to stop them yourselves. Do not confront them. Your job is to act like nothing has changed." I nodded, but my stomach was churning. Going back in there, pretending everything was fine, watching Linda smile at Mom while planning to destroy her life, it felt impossible. "One more thing," Officer Martinez said. "We'll need to see that power of attorney document and any other paperwork your mother signed recently." "It's probably at Linda's house," I said. "We'll get a warrant for that. But first, let's make sure your mother stays safe tonight." As we walked back toward the community center, I felt like I was walking into enemy territory. The warm, festive building that had seemed so welcoming an hour ago now felt like a trap. "Remember," Jason whispered, "everything is normal. We just went to the car to get something." But nothing would ever be normal again, because now I knew what my sister was capable of, and I had no idea how far she'd go to protect her secret. The automatic doors slid open, and we stepped back into the party. Linda rushed over immediately, her face bright with fake concern. "There you are. Mom was worried sick. Where did you go?" "Car," I said simply, amazed at how steady my voice sounded. "For 45 minutes? Had we really been gone that long?" Time had felt both frozen and racing while we sat in that parking lot. "Car trouble," Jason said smoothly. "We got it sorted out." Linda's eyes narrowed slightly, but her smile never wavered. "Well, you missed Mom's speech. She thanked everyone for coming, especially her 2 daughters and her wonderful grandson." Her 2 daughters. I wondered if Mom would still feel that way tomorrow when she learned what Linda had planned for her. "Where is she?" I asked. "Sitting with Mrs. Henderson and the Bridge Club ladies. They're telling stories about the good old days." I looked across the room and saw Mom surrounded by women her age, all of them laughing at something Mrs. Henderson was saying. Mom looked absolutely radiant, not like someone who needed to be in a nursing home, not like someone who was losing her mind. "She looks wonderful," I said. "Oh, you know Mom, always puts on a good show," Linda said dismissively. "But we both know she's been struggling lately." "Struggling with what?" I wanted to ask, but I bit my tongue and nodded like I agreed. "Well," Linda continued, "Paul and I were thinking we'd drive her home after this. Save you the trip." There it was, the setup. They wanted to get Mom alone. That's sweet of you, I said. But Jason and I were planning to take her. We want to spend a little more time together. Linda's smile flickered for just a second. Oh, well, that's fine, I suppose, though we did promise to help her sort through some paperwork tonight. You know how she gets confused about her Medicare statements. Medicare statements. Right. More papers for Mom to sign while she was confused and trusting. Maybe tomorrow would be better, I suggested. She'll be tired after today. Yes, but the paperwork has deadlines. It really needs to be done tonight. We stared at each other across the gap of 47 years of sisterhood, and for the first time in my life, I saw Linda clearly. Not as my big sister who'd protected me from schoolyard bullies. Not as the successful woman who'd always seemed to have her life together, but as a predator who'd been planning to destroy our mother's life for money. We'll figure it out, I said finally. Linda nodded, but I could see the wheels turning behind her eyes. She was already planning her next move. That's when I noticed Paul across the room, deep in conversation with a man I didn't recognize. A tall, thin man in a doctor's coat who kept glancing toward Mom. Dr. Peterson, the doctor who was supposed to declare Mom mentally incompetent. He was here, at the party, ready to make his assessment. Dr. Peterson shook hands with Paul like they were old friends, which maybe they were by now. I watched them from across the room, pretending to listen to Linda chatter about the success of the party, while my mind raced through the implications. Isn't it wonderful that Dr. Peterson could make it? Linda said, following my gaze. He's been so concerned about Mom's confusion lately. Confusion? Mom had just given a 10-minute speech thanking everyone by name, remembered stories from 40 years ago, and correctly identified every person in her old photographs. If that was confusion, I wanted to be confused too. He seems very attentive, I said carefully. Oh, he is. He's been wonderful about making house calls to check on her. Very thorough examinations. House calls. Dr. Peterson had been making house calls to evaluate Mom, probably documenting anything that could be used to justify commitment. A forgotten name here. A moment of uncertainty there. And suddenly, you have a pattern of cognitive decline. Jason appeared at my elbow with a plate of cake. Grandma wants to know if you'll sit with her for a while. Of course. I started toward Mom's table, but Linda caught my arm. Actually, Carol, could I speak with you privately for a minute? There's something I need to discuss. Every instinct I had screamed danger. Getting me away from Mom, away from witnesses, away from Jason. But refusing would raise suspicions. Sure, I said. Jason, why don't you keep Grandma company? Linda led me to a quiet corner near the kitchen, far enough from the main party that we couldn't be overheard. She looked around to make sure we were alone, then her entire demeanor changed. The bright party hostess vanished, replaced by someone harder, more calculating. Carol, we need to talk about Mom. What about her? Don't play dumb. I know you've noticed the changes. What changes? Linda sighed dramatically. She's forgetting things, leaving the stove on, getting confused about her medications. Yesterday I found her outside in her nightgown at 3 a.m. She said she was waiting for Dad to come home from work. Dad had been dead for 12 years. But if Mom had really said that, it could indicate cognitive issues. Or it could be something Linda made up to support her narrative. I haven't noticed any of that, I said. That's because you don't see her every day like I do. You visit for an hour on Sundays and think you know how she's doing. The accusation stung because there was some truth to it. Linda did spend more time with Mom. But now I wondered if those visits were surveillance missions, not family time. What are you suggesting? I asked. I'm suggesting that we need to start thinking about her safety, about getting her the care she needs before something terrible happens. She seems fine to me. She's putting on an act. Carol, she always has. You know how Mom is about appearances. She'd rather die than admit she's struggling. That part was definitely true. Mom had always been proud, always determined to handle things herself, but using Mom's independence against her was particularly cruel. So what do you want to do? Paul and I have been researching facilities. There's a beautiful place called Sunset Manor that specializes in memory care. Very high-end, excellent staff. Memory care? Linda, she doesn't have dementia. Not yet. But early intervention is key. The doctor says if we wait until she's completely incapacitated, the transition will be much harder. The doctor. Dr. Peterson, who was currently across the room, probably taking notes on Mom's behavior for his official assessment. "I think we should slow down," I said. "Maybe get a second opinion." Linda's expression hardened. "Carol, I've been handling Mom's affairs for months while you've been buried in your own problems. I know what's best for her. My own problems. Code for my divorce, my job loss, my general life falling apart. Linda had always been good at making me feel inadequate. I'm still her daughter," I said. "I get a say in this." "Do you?" "Because according to the power of attorney documents, I'm the one responsible for her care decisions." There it was. The power of attorney that Mom thought was just for Medicare paperwork. Linda's ace in the hole. "When did you become her power of attorney?" "This morning." She signed the papers voluntarily with Dr. Peterson as a witness. Dr. Peterson again. The man was everywhere in their plan. "I want to see those documents." "Of course. I have copies at home. We can review them tomorrow when we meet with the admissions director at Sunset Manor." "You've already set up a meeting?" "Monday morning. I made the appointment weeks ago, assuming you'd want to be involved in choosing Mom's new home." Weeks ago, before Mom had even signed the power of attorney. They'd been planning this for weeks, maybe months. "And if I don't agree?" Linda shrugged. "Then you don't agree. But I have the legal authority to make decisions about her care, and Dr. Peterson's assessment supports immediate placement." "What assessment? When did he assess her?" "During his house calls. He's been monitoring her condition for months." I felt trapped in their web of planning and manipulation. Every angle had been covered, every objection anticipated, except for one thing they hadn't counted on. "I think Mom should have a say in this," I said. "Mom isn't capable of making rational decisions about her own care anymore. That's the whole point. She seems pretty rational to me." "Because she's having a good day. You should see her on the bad days." Maybe she had bad days. Maybe getting older was harder than it looked from the outside. But condemning someone to institutional care based on their worst moments seemed wrong. "Let's table this for now," I said. "It's her birthday. We can discuss it later." "Actually, we can't." Linda checked her watch. "The doctor needs to complete his assessment tonight to have the paperwork ready for Monday's meeting." "Assessment? What kind of assessment?" "Just a few simple questions. Memory tests, cognitive function, that sort of thing. Nothing stressful." I looked across the room at Mom, still surrounded by her friends, still sharp and engaged. Then I looked at Dr. Peterson, still talking with Paul, still taking notes. "And if she passes these tests?" "Carol." Linda's voice was patient, the way you'd talk to a child. "She's not going to pass. People with her condition rarely do." Her condition. Mom didn't have a condition beyond being 85 years old, but apparently, in Linda's world, being old was condition enough. "I want to be there when he talks to her." That might make her nervous. Dr. Peterson prefers to conduct these evaluations in private. Of course he did. It was easier to manipulate responses when there were no witnesses. Then I want to review his notes afterward. Doctor-patient confidentiality prevents. I want copies of everything, Linda. The power of attorney documents. The medical assessment. The nursing home applications. If you're doing this for Mom's own good, you should have no problem sharing the paperwork. Linda's smile faltered. "Of course. I'll have everything ready for you tomorrow." Tomorrow, when it would be too late to stop whatever they had planned for tonight. "Actually," I said, "I'd like to see the power of attorney documents tonight, just to understand exactly what authority you have. They're at home. Then let's go get them." "Carol, I'm not leaving Mom's party to drive home for paperwork. Don't be ridiculous. Then maybe this whole conversation is premature. Maybe we should wait until I can review the documents before making any decisions." I watched Linda's face cycle through frustration, anger, and calculation. She needed me on board, or at least neutralized. Having me actively opposed to the plan would create complications. "Fine," she said finally. "I'll bring the paperwork to your house tomorrow morning. We can review everything together." "What time?" 9 o'clock. By 9 o'clock tomorrow, if their plan worked, Mom would already be in the nursing home, confused and drugged, with no way to fight the commitment. "Actually," I said, "why don't I just come home with you tonight after the party? We can review everything then, and I can help you prepare for Monday's meeting." Linda's eyes narrowed. She was trying to figure out why I was suddenly so eager to be involved, when I'd been absent from Mom's care for months. That's very thoughtful, Carol. But it's been a long day, and I think we'd both benefit from a good night's sleep before diving into complicated legal documents. I'm a night owl. And this is too important to delay. We stared at each other, and I could see Linda's mind working frantically. She needed to get Mom alone tonight. She needed me out of the way. But she also couldn't afford to make me suspicious by being too obvious about it. "Let me talk to Paul," she said finally. Maybe we can arrange something." She walked away, leaving me standing by the kitchen, watching the party continue around me. But now everything looked different. Every conversation, every interaction, every innocent moment was potentially part of Linda and Paul's plan. I looked around for Jason and spotted him still sitting with Mom, both of them laughing at something Mrs. Henderson was saying. At least he was keeping her safe for now. But the night was still young, and Linda and Paul were running out of time to complete their scheme, which meant they might start taking risks. And risky people do dangerous things. I watched Linda cross the room to Paul, her posture tense despite her smile. They spoke in low tones, Paul's expression darkening as she explained whatever obstacle I'd just become. Dr. Peterson joined their conversation, and all three of them glanced in my direction. The plan was falling apart, and they knew it. Jason appeared beside me, holding 2 cups of punch. "You look like you need this." "Thanks." I took the cup, but didn't drink. "How's Mom?" "Sharp as ever. She just told Mrs. Henderson the entire plot of a book she read last week. Remembered every character's name and all the plot twists. So much for cognitive decline. But I knew it wouldn't matter. If they wanted Mom declared incompetent, they'd find a way to make it happen. "Jason," I said quietly, "I need you to stay close to Mom for the rest of the night. Don't let her eat or drink anything unless you see exactly where it came from." His face went serious. "You think they'll try something here?" "I think they're running out of options." Across the room, Linda was walking toward Mom's table with what looked like a small gift bag. She was smiling, but there was something forced about it now, something desperate. "Incoming," I murmured. We moved quickly to intercept her, arriving at Mom's table just as Linda set down the bag. "Mom, I almost forgot. I brought you a little something extra for your special day." "Oh, Linda, you've done so much already," Mom protested, but she was already reaching for the bag. "What is it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "Just some of those herbal teas she loves. Remember, Mom, you mentioned your sleeping problems, and I found this wonderful chamomile blend that's supposed to help. Herbal tea. The perfect delivery method for whatever drug they'd planned to use. Natural, innocent, something Mom would drink willingly." "How thoughtful," I said, reaching for the bag. "May I see?" Linda's hand shot out to stop me. "Actually, they're specially wrapped. I don't want to ruin the presentation. I'd love to see what kind you got her. I've been having trouble sleeping too." For a moment, we had a polite tug-of-war over the gift bag, both of us smiling while our eyes locked in silent battle. Mom watched this strange display with growing confusion. "Girls, what's gotten into you?" she asked. "Nothing, Mom," Linda said, releasing the bag. "Carol's just being thorough." I opened the bag and found 3 boxes of tea, all with seals intact, all looking completely innocent. But I noticed Linda's hands were shaking slightly as I examined them. "These look lovely," I said, handing the bag to Jason. "Why don't you put these in the car for Grandma? We'll make sure she gets them home safely." Jason understood immediately. "Good idea. I'll take them out right now." "That's not necessary," Linda started, but Jason was already walking away with the tea. "Such a helpful boy," Mom said proudly. Linda's smile was starting to crack around the edges. "Yes, very helpful." Dr. Peterson approached our table, his professional demeanor intact but his eyes darting nervously between Linda and me. "Mrs. Wilson," he said to Mom, "I was hoping to chat with you for a few minutes. Just a quick check-in about how you're feeling." "Oh, I'm feeling wonderful." "Doctor, this has been such a perfect day." "That's excellent to hear, but sometimes these big events can be overwhelming for people our age. I'd like to ask you a few questions to make sure you're not overtaxing yourself." Our age. Mom was 85. Dr. Peterson looked to be in his 60s, but the implication was clear. "You're old, you're fragile, you can't handle excitement." "What kind of questions?" I asked. Dr. Peterson glanced at Linda, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. "Just standard cognitive assessments, memory, orientation, that sort of thing. Nothing to worry about." "Here?" I gestured around the crowded room. Wouldn't your office be more appropriate for medical assessments? I prefer to evaluate patients in their natural environment. It gives a more accurate picture of their functional capacity, their natural environment, as if a birthday party was where Mom spent most of her time. Mom, I said, you don't have to answer any medical questions at your birthday party. This is supposed to be fun, not a doctor's appointment. Now, Carol, Linda interjected, Dr. Peterson is just being thorough. There's no harm in a few simple questions. Actually, there might be. I looked directly at Dr. Peterson. Aren't there protocols for cognitive assessments, standardized environments, specific procedures, patient consent forms? Dr. Peterson's professional facade flickered. Well, yes, but this is more of an informal check-in. With what purpose? Are you documenting this informal check-in? Will it be part of Mom's medical record? That depends on the results. So if Mom gives answers you don't like, it becomes official. But if she passes, it's just an informal chat. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Mom looked back and forth between us, clearly sensing the tension, but not understanding its source. What's this really about? She asked. Before anyone could answer, Jason reappeared at the table. He caught my eye and shook his head almost imperceptibly. I interpreted that to mean he'd found something wrong with the tea. Dr. Peterson was just leaving, I said firmly. Actually, I think it would be beneficial. Doctor. My voice was sharp enough to cut glass. My mother is at her birthday party, surrounded by friends, clearly alert and engaged. If you have medical concerns, you can schedule a proper appointment with proper procedures. But you're not conducting any kind of assessment here tonight. Dr. Peterson looked to Linda for support, but she was staring at the tablecloth, her face pale. Perhaps another time, he said finally, and walked away. Mom watched him go, then looked at me with eyes that were far sharper than anyone with dementia should have. Carol, honey, what's going on? The question hung in the air. This was the moment when I had to decide how much to tell her, how much truth she could handle, how much danger she was really in. Mom, I said carefully, I think some people might be trying to take advantage of you. What people? I glanced at Linda, who was still avoiding eye contact. People who think you have more money than you can handle. People who think you need to be taken care of. Nonsense, Mom said briskly. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. I know you are, but not everyone agrees. Mom followed my gaze to Linda, who finally looked up with tears in her eyes. Linda? Mom's voice was soft, but there was steel underneath. Is there something you want to tell me? For a moment, I thought Linda might confess. Her face crumpled, and she looked like the scared little girl I remembered from our childhood. But then Paul appeared at her shoulder, and the moment passed. Mom, Linda's just worried about you, Paul said smoothly. We all are. Living alone at your age, managing all your affairs by yourself. It's a lot of responsibility. I've been managing my own affairs for 85 years, Mom said dryly. I think I've got the hang of it by now. Of course you do, Paul continued, but sometimes it helps to have family support, legal protections, professional assistance. Professional assistance. Code for guardianship, power of attorney, nursing home placement. What kind of legal protections? Mom asked. Oh, just some paperwork to make things easier, in case you ever need help with decisions or medical care. I signed some Medicare forms this morning, Mom said slowly. Linda said they were just insurance updates. That's right, Linda said quickly. Nothing important. But Mom was looking at her with growing suspicion. Linda, what exactly did I sign? Just some forms to help me help you, if you ever need it. What kind of help? The question was simple, but Linda couldn't answer it without revealing the truth. She looked trapped, panicked, caught between lies she could no longer maintain. Tell her, I said quietly. Carol, please, tell her what you're planning to do to her. We're not planning anything, Paul said, but his voice lacked conviction. Then why is Dr. Peterson here, trying to assess her competency? Why did you bring drugged tea to her birthday party? Why have you been researching nursing homes for weeks? Mom's face went white. Nursing homes? The party continued around us, but our table had become an island of tense silence. Mrs. Henderson and the other ladies had moved away, sensing family drama and wanting no part of it. Linda, Mom said, her voice shaking, please tell me you're not trying to put me in a nursing home. Linda burst into tears. Real tears this time, not the manipulative kind she'd used to get what she wanted since childhood. "Mom, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, but we need the money, and the house is just sitting there, and you don't need all that space. And you thought you'd steal my home and have me committed so I couldn't stop you." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Even Paul had no response to that level of brutal honesty. But before anyone could say anything else, the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a few seconds later, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. There were murmurs of confusion from the party guests, but no panic. Power outages weren't uncommon in this part of town. "Everyone stay calm," someone announced. "I'm sure it's just temporary." But in the dim emergency lighting, I saw Paul grab Mom's arm and start pulling her toward the exit. "Come on, Mrs. Wilson," he said. "Let's get you outside where it's safer." That's when I realized the power outage wasn't an accident, and our mother was about to disappear into the night. "Stop," I said, moving to block Paul's path to the exit. "Carol, she needs fresh air," Paul said, but his grip on Mom's arm was too tight for someone who was just being helpful. "Then, open a window." In the dim emergency lighting, I could see other party guests moving calmly toward the exits, guided by ushers with flashlights. It was an orderly evacuation, exactly what you'd expect from a well-managed venue dealing with a routine power outage, except nothing about this was routine. "Where's Linda?" I asked. Paul glanced around nervously. "She went to check on the backup generator." Linda knew about the backup generator? That seemed like unusually specific knowledge for a party guest. "Jason," I called out, spotting my son helping elderly guests navigate in the dim light. "Right here, Mom. We're leaving. All of us. Together." "The parking lot's a bit chaotic right now," Paul said. "Might be better to wait until—" "No." I took Mom's other arm, gently but firmly removing her from Paul's grip. "We're going to my car, and we're going home." "Actually," a familiar voice said behind me, "I think that's an excellent idea." Officer Martinez stepped out of the shadows, no longer trying to blend in with the party guests. In the emergency lighting, his badge was clearly visible. Paul's face went white. "Officer, is there a problem?" "Several problems, actually, starting with the fact that the power didn't wasn't an accident." "I don't understand." "Someone cut the main electrical line to the building. Someone who knew exactly where to find it and how to disable the backup generator delay system." I looked at Paul, whose expression had shifted from nervous to terrified. "We also found some interesting items in your jacket pocket, Mr. Barrett. Would you like to explain what you're doing with prescription sedatives that aren't prescribed to you?" Paul's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Those aren't mine." "Whose are they?" "I don't know. Someone must have planted them." "Someone planted unmarked pills in your jacket pocket? At your mother-in-law's birthday party?" When Officer Martinez put it like that, it sounded exactly as ridiculous as it was. "Where's Linda?" Mom asked. "Mom," her voice steady despite everything that had just happened. "Being questioned by my colleagues," Officer Martinez said, "along with Dr. Peterson." Dr. Peterson. I'd almost forgotten about him in the chaos. "What did they find?" I asked. "Forged medical records documenting cognitive decline that never actually occurred. Pre-signed commitment papers. Applications to 3 different nursing homes, all submitted last week." "Last week?" Mom's voice was sharp with anger. "Before I ever signed any power of attorney?" "Yes, ma'am. It appears this plan has been in motion for several months." Mom looked around the dim room, taking in the chaos, the emergency lighting, the reality of what her daughter had tried to do to her. "I want to see Linda," she said finally. "Mom, I don't think—" I started. "I want to see her now." Officer Martinez nodded. "She's in the security office. But I should warn you, Mrs. Wilson. She's been advised of her rights and has requested an attorney." "Fine. She can have an attorney. But first, she's going to look me in the eye and explain herself." We followed Officer Martinez through the confused crowd of party guests. Most people were gathered in small groups, speculating about the power outage and wondering when they could leave. They had no idea that they'd just witnessed the collapse of an elder abuse conspiracy. The security office was a small room behind the main hall. Linda sat in a plastic chair, her party dress wrinkled, her makeup smeared from crying. She looked up when we entered, and her face crumpled again. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far." "How far did you mean for it to go?" Mom asked. her voice deadly calm. We needed money, and you have so much, and you're alone in that big house. And I thought maybe if you were somewhere safer. Safer? You mean more expensive? The nursing home is very nice, Mom. I researched it carefully. You would have been comfortable, while you sold my house and spent my money. Linda couldn't meet her eyes. It was going to be yours anyway. Eventually, I was just expediting the process. Expediting my death, you mean? No, I would never. You were going to drug me and have me committed against my will. You forged medical records to make me seem incompetent. You cut the power at my birthday party to create chaos so you could kidnap me in the confusion. Put like that, the plan sounded like something out of a crime thriller, except it was real, and it had almost worked. I was desperate, Linda whispered. Desperate enough to destroy your own mother? Linda finally looked up, tears streaming down her face. I didn't think of it that way. I thought I was solving everyone's problems. Everyone's problems. Including the problem of me being alive and healthy. Mom, please. No. Mom's voice cut through Linda's pleading like a blade. You don't get to call me Mom anymore. You lost that right when you decided I was worth more dead than alive. The words hit Linda like a physical blow. She doubled over, sobbing. Mrs. Wilson, Officer Martinez said gently, we'll need you to come to the station to make a formal statement. Of course. But first, I want to know about Paul and Dr. Peterson. Dr. Peterson is looking at fraud charges, conspiracy, possibly more depending on what we find in his files. Mr. Barrett will likely face kidnapping charges, elder abuse, conspiracy. And Linda? That depends partly on her cooperation and partly on what charges you want to pursue. Mom looked at her daughter, who was still crying in the plastic chair. I want to pursue all of them, she said finally. Every single charge you can think of. Linda's head snapped up. Mom, please, I'm your daughter. No, Mom said sadly. You were my daughter. The woman who tried to steal my life is a stranger. We left Linda in the security office and followed Officer Martinez outside. The parking lot was still crowded with confused party guests. But the crowd was thinning as people realized the party was over. What happens now? I asked. Arraignments? Probably tomorrow. Trial in a few months. But with the evidence we have, including the recording your son made, convictions are very likely. Jason appeared beside us, slightly out of breath. The tea was definitely drugged, he said. The lab tech did a quick field test. Some kind of sedative, strong enough to knock out someone grandma's size for hours. Hours. Long enough to get her to the nursing home. Long enough for the drugs to confuse her enough that she'd seem disoriented when she woke up. Long enough for Dr. Peterson to declare her mentally incompetent based on her drugged behavior. They really thought of everything, I said. Almost everything, Mom corrected. They didn't count on having a grandson smart enough to smell a rat. Jason grinned. Or stubborn enough to do something about it. Or a daughter who finally learned to see through her sister's lies, I added. Mom looked back at the community center where her birthday party had turned into a crime scene. 85 years old, she said. I thought I'd seen everything. Are you okay? I asked. She considered the question seriously. You know what? I think I'm better than okay. For the first time in months, I know exactly who I can trust. She looked at Jason and me, then back at the building where Linda was presumably still crying in the security office. I'm free, she said, with something that sounded like wonder. I'm finally free. As we drove away from the community center, emergency lights flashing in our rearview mirror, I realized Mom was right. She was free from the daughter who'd been planning to betray her, free from the worry about cognitive decline that had been manufactured to justify abuse, free from the fear of losing her independence. But most importantly, she was free from the people who saw her as a problem to be solved rather than a person to be loved. And tomorrow, Linda and Paul would wake up in jail cells, facing the consequences of treating an elderly woman like a commodity instead of a human being. Sometimes justice really is served at exactly the right temperature. Ice cold. 3 days after Linda's arrest, I found myself sitting in a police station conference room that smelled like burnt coffee and broken dreams. Detective Sarah Rodriguez spread photos across the metal table like she was dealing cards in the world's most depressing poker game. Mrs. Miller, we need you to look at these and tell us if you recognize any of these people. The first photo showed Linda and Paul at what looked like a restaurant, deep in conversation with a man I'd never seen before. The second showed the same man shaking hands with Dr. Peterson outside a medical building. The third made my blood run cold. It was Mom, photographed through what looked like a telephoto lens, walking to her mailbox in her bathrobe and slippers. "When was this taken?" I asked. 2 months ago. We found it on Mr. Barrett's computer along with about 50 others. 50 photos. They'd been stalking my mother for months, documenting her every move, looking for anything they could use to make her seem vulnerable or confused. "The man in the restaurant photos is named Marcus Webb," Detective Rodriguez continued. "He's a private investigator specializing in what he calls family asset protection." "What does that mean?" "Helping adult children prove their elderly parents are incompetent so they can take control of their finances." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. This wasn't just Linda and Paul getting desperate about money. This was a professional operation. "How many families has he done this to?" "We're still investigating, but it looks like at least 12 in the past 2 years. Your mother would have been number 13. Lucky 13. Or unlucky, depending on your perspective. The good news," Detective Rodriguez continued, "is that your quick thinking probably saved not just your mother, but future victims. Webb's entire operation is falling apart. What about the other families? The ones where it worked? We're reopening those cases. Some of those elderly people might still be alive in nursing homes, wondering why their children never visit." The weight of that settled on my chest, like a stone. Somewhere out there were old people who'd been betrayed by their own families, locked away in institutions, their life savings stolen, their dignity destroyed. "There's something else," Detective Rodriguez said, pulling out another folder. "Linda's been trying to make a deal." "What kind of deal?" "Information about Webb's operation in exchange for reduced charges." I thought about Linda crying in the security office, asking Mom to still call her daughter. The idea that she was now trying to bargain her way out of consequences felt exactly right. "Is Mom aware of this?" "We briefed her yesterday. She had some very strong opinions about your sister's latest scheme." I could imagine. Mom didn't believe in shortcuts, especially when they involved betraying other people. "What did she say?" I believe her exact words were, "Let Linda dig herself out of the hole she dug herself into, preferably with a very small spoon." That sounded like Mom. Even at 85, even after being betrayed by her own daughter, she still had more backbone than most people half her age. Detective Rodriguez gathered the photos. "We'll need you to testify about what you observed at the party and what Linda told you about their plans." "Of course. Fair warning. Their attorney is going to try to paint your family as dysfunctional. They'll suggest that Linda was acting out of genuine concern for your mother's safety. With drugged tea and forged medical records? They'll claim the tea was a mistake, that Dr. Peterson acted independently, that the power outage was coincidental. They'll make Linda look like a caring daughter who got in over her head." I thought about Linda's performance at the party, the fake concern, the manufactured crisis, the careful manipulation of every conversation. If I hadn't heard that recording, I might have believed her act myself. Will that work? Not with the evidence we have. But juries can be unpredictable, especially when family relationships are involved. I left the police station with a folder full of documents and a head full of questions. How long had Linda been planning this? Was the financial desperation real or just an excuse? And most importantly, how many warning signs had I missed over the years? Mom was waiting for me in my living room when I got home, sitting in my favorite chair like she owned the place, which, given recent events, was probably exactly the attitude she needed. "How did it go?" she asked. "Complicated. There's more to this than just Linda and Paul." I explained about Marcus Webb and the other families, about Linda's attempt to make a deal, about the photos they'd taken of her. Mom listened without interruption, her face growing harder with each detail. 50 photos, she said when I finished. At least. For 2 months, I thought I was developing paranoia because I kept feeling like someone was watching me. Turns out, I wasn't paranoid enough. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have seen what was happening." "How?" "Linda's been practicing manipulation since she could talk. Remember when she convinced the teacher that I forgot to pack her lunch so she could get free meal tickets? She was 8 years old, and she was already learning that lying got her what she wanted. I thought she'd outgrow it." Mom stood up and walked to my kitchen window, looking out at the street like she was checking for surveillance. The detective said Linda wants to make a deal, she said. Information about the private investigator in exchange for lighter charges. And what do you think about that? I think Linda created this mess and should face the consequences. Mom nodded approvingly. Good. Because I've been thinking about those other families, the ones where this scheme actually worked. What about them? Someone needs to check on them. Someone needs to make sure they're actually receiving proper care, that their money is being used for their benefit. Mom, that's not your responsibility. She turned from the window, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Not anger, not sadness, but determination with a sharp edge. Whose responsibility is it then? The police will investigate the crimes, but who's going to actually visit these people? Who's going to make sure they're not sitting in some facility wondering why their children abandoned them? There are social workers, patient advocates, who are overworked and underfunded and probably don't even know these people exist. She had a point. The system was designed to process cases, not to care for individuals. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that I have time, resources, and a very personal understanding of what these people have been through. I'm suggesting that maybe Linda's betrayal should result in something positive. Mom, you're 85 years old. So were some of the victims. Age doesn't disqualify me from helping people. I could see where this was heading, and part of me admired her instinct to turn trauma into purpose. But another part of me worried about her taking on more stress after everything she'd been through. Let me help, I said. You have your own life to rebuild, your job, your divorce, your recovery from all the chaos Linda created. Linda didn't just attack you. She attacked our whole family. Jason and I deserve a chance to fight back too. Mom smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her since the party. Fight back by helping other families? Fight back by making sure this never happens to anyone else. That, Mom said, sounds like a plan. That night, I lay in bed thinking about the photos of Mom in her bathrobe, about Linda's tears in the security office, about elderly people sitting in nursing homes wondering why their children never called. But mostly I thought about the expression on Mom's face when she talked about helping the other victims. For the first time since Dad died, she looked like she had a purpose beyond just surviving. Linda had tried to destroy Mom's life for money. Instead, she'd given Mom something more valuable, a mission. The irony was almost poetic. Almost. The first nursing home we visited looked like a luxury hotel from the outside. Manicured lawns, elegant architecture, discreet signs advertising premium senior living. But the smell hit us the moment we walked through the doors. Industrial disinfectant, trying to mask something unpleasant underneath. We're here to visit Margaret Foster, Mom told the receptionist, using the information Detective Rodriguez had given us. Are you family? Old friends, Mom said smoothly. We haven't seen her since she moved here. The receptionist checked her computer. Room 247. Take the elevator to the second floor. Turn right. Room 247 was at the end of a long hallway lined with wheelchairs and confused-looking residents. We found Margaret Foster sitting by her window, staring out at the parking lot with blank eyes. She was thin, pale, wearing a hospital gown instead of regular clothes. Mrs. Foster? Mom approached gently. My name is Dorothy Wilson. This is my daughter, Carol. Margaret turned slowly, and I saw a flicker of awareness in her eyes. Not confusion or dementia, but surprise that someone was talking to her. Are you here to see me? Yes, we are. We wanted to check on how you're doing. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. No one visits anymore. My son said the drive was too far. According to the police files, Margaret's son lived 12 minutes away, but he'd been too busy spending her money to visit. How are they treating you here? Mom asked. The nurses are nice enough, but Margaret glanced around nervously, then leaned forward. I'm not supposed to be here. This is all a mistake. What kind of mistake? I signed some papers for my son. He said they were insurance forms. Next thing I knew, men in white coats were at my door saying I had to come here for my own safety. The story was almost identical to what Linda had planned for Mom. The same lies, the same manipulation, the same tragic result. Mrs. Foster, I said gently, do you know what those papers were? Power of attorney, they told me later. But I never agreed to that. I never said my son could put me in a home. Mom and I exchanged glances. Margaret Foster was coherent. articulate, clearly capable of making her own decisions. She'd been warehoused here because it was convenient and profitable. "What happened to your house?" Mom asked. "Sold it. My son said I needed the money for care, but I never see any bills. I asked for my checkbook, and they say family members handle all that now. Do you want to leave here?" Margaret's face lit up with hope, so desperate it was painful to see. "More than anything. But they say I can't. They say I'm not competent to make that decision." We spent an hour with Margaret, listening to her stories about her life before the nursing home, her confusion about how she'd ended up here, her longing to go home. She was sharp, funny, completely alert. The only thing wrong with her was that she'd trusted the wrong person. As we prepared to leave, Margaret grabbed Mom's hand. "Will you come back?" "Yes," Mom promised. "We'll be back next week." In the car afterward, we sat in silence for several minutes. 12 people, I said finally. At least 12. Webb's operation has been running for 2 years. How many Margaret Fosters are sitting in rooms like that right now? Too many. Mom pulled out her phone and called Detective Rodriguez. "Detective, it's Dorothy Wilson. I need to know about legal advocacy for elderly people who've been inappropriately committed." "Yes, I'll hold." While Mom worked the legal angle, I found myself thinking about Linda again. Had she ever considered what Mom's life would be like in a place like that? Had she imagined Mom sitting by a window, wondering why her family never visited? "There's a legal aid organization that specializes in elder rights," Mom said after hanging up. "They can petition for Margaret's release, but they need evidence of inappropriate commitment. We can provide that. It's not enough. We need medical evaluations, financial records, proof that she was coerced into signing documents." "So what do? We document everything, every conversation, every detail about her mental state, every indication that she's being held against her will." "Mom, we're not investigators." "No, but we're witnesses, and sometimes that's enough." That evening, Jason came over for dinner and found us surrounded by files, legal documents, and notes about Margaret Foster's case. "This looks intense," he said. "We're building a case to get an elderly woman out of inappropriate nursing home placement," I explained. "The woman whose son tried to do the same thing to Grandma?" "One of them." Jason picked up a photo of Margaret that we'd printed from the nursing home's website. "She looks sad." "She is sad and confused and abandoned by the person who was supposed to protect her. Like what almost happened to Grandma." "Exactly." Jason studied the papers for a moment. "What can I do to help?" "You're 27 years old," Mom said. "You have better things to do than—" "Grandma, with respect, that's crap. This matters. What they tried to do to you, what they did to her, it's not okay. If there's a way to fix it, I want to help." Mom smiled at him with pure affection. "In that case, we need someone good with computers to research Marcus Webb's other cases and track down the families involved." "On it." As Jason settled in with his laptop, I realized something had shifted in our family dynamic. 3 weeks ago, we'd been focused on our own problems. My divorce, Jason's job search, Mom's increasing isolation. Now we were working together towards something bigger than ourselves. "You know what's strange?" I said. "What?" "Linda thought she was solving a problem by getting rid of you. Instead, she created something better." "Better how?" "Before this happened, we were all living separate lives. You were alone in your house, I was dealing with my divorce, Jason was figuring out his career. We barely saw each other except for holidays. And now? Now we're a team." Mom looked around at the papers scattered across my dining table, at Jason typing intently on his laptop, at the evidence of our shared mission. "You're right," she said. "Linda wanted to destroy our family to get my money. Instead, she showed us what our family could actually be. A force for justice? A force for something anyway." Jason looked up from his computer. "I found something. Webb has been advertising his services on a website called Concerned Children Resources. He targets adult children who are worried about elderly parents with substantial assets." "What kind of advertising?" "Is your elderly parent making poor financial decisions, refusing necessary care, putting themselves at risk? We can help you get the legal authority to protect them and preserve family assets." "Protect them," I said bitterly. "Right. There's more. He's got testimonials from satisfied clients talking about how he helped them secure their inheritance and ensure proper care for aging parents. Testimonials from people like Linda. Probably. But here's the interesting part. One of the testimonials is from someone named Jennifer Barrett. Mom and I looked at each other. Barrett? Like Paul Barrett? Could be a relative. Let me dig deeper. As Jason researched, I thought about the scope of what we were uncovering. This wasn't just a few isolated cases of adult children taking advantage of elderly parents. This was an organized system, marketed and sold like any other professional service. Found her, Jason announced. Jennifer Barrett is Paul's sister. She used web services 2 years ago to have her father committed and his assets transferred to her control. Where's her father now? Jason's expression darkened. He died in a nursing home 6 months ago. But according to his obituary, he left behind a loving family and a substantial charitable legacy. Charitable legacy? Jennifer donated his money to various causes after he died, made herself look like a philanthropist instead of a thief. So Paul learned the technique from his sister. It looks that way. I stared at the computer screen, feeling sick. This wasn't just about greed or desperation. This was about people who'd turned elder abuse into a family business. How many people has Webb helped commit inappropriately? Still counting, but it's looking like at least 20 families over the past 3 years. 20 families. 20 elderly people who'd trusted their children and ended up imprisoned for it. 20 Margaret Fosters sitting by windows, wondering why no one loved them anymore. We have to stop this, I said. We will, Mom said firmly. One case at a time, one family at a time, one elderly person at a time. It seems overwhelming. Everything worthwhile is overwhelming at first. But as we worked late into the night, documenting cases and building files, I began to understand why Mom had been so determined to take this on. For the first time since Dad died, she had a purpose that matched her strength. Linda had tried to make Mom into a victim. Instead, she'd created an advocate. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, but it felt enormous when Linda walked in wearing an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. She'd lost weight in the 3 weeks since her arrest, and her usual perfect appearance had been replaced by something hollow and desperate. She didn't look at Mom or me as she sat at the defendant's table next to her attorney, a sharp-faced woman in an expensive suit who clearly cost more than Linda could afford, which raised the question of who was paying for her defense. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Morrison. Judge Morrison was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and the kind of no-nonsense expression that suggested she'd seen every type of family drama imaginable. She reviewed the charges with clinical precision: elder abuse, conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted kidnapping, forgery of medical records. How does the defendant plead? Linda's attorney stood. Not guilty by reason of diminished capacity, Your Honor. Diminished capacity. They were going to claim Linda wasn't responsible for her actions. On what grounds? My client was suffering from severe financial stress and clinical depression that impaired her judgment. She believed she was acting in her mother's best interests. I felt Mom stiffen beside me. The idea that Linda's depression justified trying to steal her life was exactly the kind of excuse Linda had been making since childhood. The prosecutor, a young man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, stood to respond. Your Honor, the evidence shows extensive premeditation. This wasn't an impulsive act by someone with impaired judgment. This was a calculated scheme that took months to plan and implement. We'll address that during trial, the judge said. I'm setting bail at $200,000. $200,000. Linda's attorney didn't even blink, which confirmed my suspicion that someone else was funding her defense. Furthermore, Judge Morrison continued, the defendant is prohibited from any contact with the alleged victim or her family members. Your Honor, the attorney said. Mrs. Barrett would like to address the court regarding her mother. Absolutely not. No contact means no contact. As we left the courthouse, I found myself looking over my shoulder, half expecting Linda to follow us. The restraining order was just a piece of paper. If she was desperate enough to drug our mother, what would stop her from approaching us directly? She looked terrible, Mom said as we reached the parking lot. Good. Carol, she's still my daughter. No, Mom. She stopped being your daughter when she decided to destroy your life for money. I know, but seeing her like that makes you feel guilty for protecting yourself? Mom was quiet for a moment. Maybe? Don't. Whatever sympathy you're feeling, remember Margaret Foster. Remember the 12 other families Webb targeted. Linda isn't a victim here. I know that intellectually. But emotionally, I keep thinking about the little girl who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms. That little girl grew up to be someone who planned to drug you and steal your home. I know, but I could see the conflict in Mom's eyes. 47 years of loving Linda couldn't be erased by 3 weeks of betrayal, no matter how complete that betrayal had been. That afternoon, we drove to our second nursing home visit. This time we were looking for James Chen, whose daughter had used Webb's services to have him committed after he refused to move in with her family. Sunshine Manor was a step down from where we'd found Margaret. The building was older, shabbier, with the kind of institutional feel that announced its residents were problems to be managed rather than people to be cared for. James Chen was in the day room, sitting alone at a table working on a crossword puzzle. He was a small, neat man in his 70s, wearing clothes that looked expensive but didn't fit properly anymore. "Mr. Chen?" Mom approached carefully. "My name is Dorothy Wilson. I wondered if I could sit with you for a few minutes." He looked up with intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Are you from the state? Another inspector?" "No, just a friend who wanted to check on how you're doing." "How I'm doing?" He set down his pencil. "I'm doing terribly. Thank you for asking." His directness was refreshing after Margaret's heartbreaking confusion. "Can you tell me what happened?" Mom asked. "My daughter decided I was too old to live alone. When I disagreed, she had me declared mentally incompetent and shipped here like a piece of furniture." "Are you mentally incompetent?" James gestured to the crossword puzzle. "Today's New York Times, Friday edition. I've completed it every day for 30 years. Does that seem incompetent to you?" Mom examined the puzzle. It was nearly finished, with only a few difficult clues remaining. "What was your profession, Mr. Chen?" "Retired professor of mathematics, 42 years at the university. I published over 60 research papers and supervised 37 doctoral dissertations." "And your daughter thought you couldn't take care of yourself?" "My daughter thought my house was too valuable to sit empty while I lived in it alone." The same story, the same motivation. Adult children who saw their parents' assets as inheritances being wasted on the parents themselves. "How long have you been here?" 8 months. My daughter visits once a month, always with papers for me to sign. Always with reasons why I need to stay here for my own safety." "What kind of papers?" "Financial documents. Mostly. Transferring accounts, authorizing expenditures. I refuse to sign them, but she keeps trying." "So you still have control of your finances?" "Theoretically. But I can't access my accounts from here. They don't allow residents to handle money." James Chen was trapped in a different way than Margaret Foster. Where Margaret had been completely dispossessed, James was being slowly bled dry through a longer, more subtle process. "Mr. Chen," I said, "would you like help getting out of here?" "Young lady, I've been trying to get out of here since the day I arrived. My daughter has legal guardianship. The facility won't release me without her permission. What if we told you there might be another way?" James studied us carefully. "Who are you people really?" Mom explained about Linda's attempted scheme, about Marcus Webb, about the other families we'd discovered. "So you're volunteers? Freelance advocates for elderly abuse victims?" "Something like that." "And you think you can help me?" "We think we can try." James was quiet for a long moment, studying his crossword puzzle. "The answer to 17 across," he said finally, "is justice. 7 letters, defined as what victims hope for, but rarely receive." He filled in the letters with steady handwriting. "I'd very much like your help," he said. As we drove home from Sunshine Manor, I found myself thinking about the difference between Margaret and James. Margaret had been confused and heartbroken by her situation. James was angry and analytical, but both of them were trapped by the same system, the same laws that allowed adult children to override their parents' autonomy in the name of protection. "2 different approaches to the same problem," I said to Mom. "What do you mean?" Margaret's daughter moved fast, signed the papers, sold the house, transferred the money, and dumped her in the cheapest facility she could find. James's daughter is taking her time, keeping him in a nicer place, maintaining the illusion of choice, but still systematically taking control. Both effective, both evil. I keep wondering how many other children are looking at their elderly parents right now and thinking about calling Marcus Webb. The thought was chilling. Somewhere out there, Adult children were calculating the value of their parents' houses, estimating the costs of nursing home care, and weighing the benefits of taking control versus respecting autonomy. At least we stopped Linda before she could actually do it, I said. Did we? Or did we just postpone it? What do you mean? I mean Linda's attorney is being paid by someone. Someone with enough money to afford expensive legal defense for elder abuse charges. I hadn't thought about that, but Mom was right. Linda and Paul didn't have the resources for high-end legal representation. You think someone's backing her? I think someone has a vested interest in making sure Linda doesn't go to prison and start talking about Marcus Webb's operation. The implications of that settled in my stomach like cold lead. If Webb had powerful clients or partners, if there was money behind this operation, then Linda's arrest might not be the end of the threat to Mom. It might just be the beginning. The call came at 2:17 a.m., 3 days before Linda's trial was scheduled to begin. I answered on the first ring, my heart already racing, because nobody calls with good news at that hour. Mrs. Miller, this is Detective Rodriguez. I need you to check on your mother immediately. What? Why? What happened? Someone broke into her house tonight. She's not answering her phone. I was already pulling on clothes, my hands shaking so badly I could barely work the buttons. Is she hurt? We don't know. The alarm company called us about a break-in, but when officers arrived, the house was empty. No sign of your mother. Empty. Mom was gone. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Mrs. Miller, wait. Don't go to the house alone. Meet us at the station first. No. If someone took my mother, every second counts. I hung up and called Jason while speeding toward Mom's neighborhood. He answered on the second ring, already wide awake. Grandma's missing, I said without preamble. What? Break-in at her house. She's gone. I'm on my way. Mom's street was blocked off with police cars, their red and blue lights turning the familiar suburban neighborhood into something from a crime scene. Detective Rodriguez met me at the barricade. Any word? I asked. Nothing yet, but we found something you need to see. She led me to Mom's front porch where the door stood open. In the bright porch light, I could see that the deadbolt had been professionally defeated. No signs of force, no damaged wood, just clean work that suggested expertise. Whoever did this knew what they were doing, Detective Rodriguez said. Where's Mom? That's what we're trying to figure out, but look at this. She handed me a plastic evidence bag containing a single sheet of paper. I recognized Linda's handwriting immediately. Mom, I'm sorry it had to come to this, but you left me no choice. By the time you read this, you'll be somewhere safe where you can get the help you need. Don't try to fight this. It's for your own good. Linda. My hands started shaking so hard I could barely hold the paper. Linda did this? How? She's supposed to be under house arrest. Her electronic monitoring device was disabled at 11:43 p.m. We have units at her apartment, but she's not there. So she what? Broke out of house arrest to kidnap our mother? It's starting to look that way. Jason arrived, took one look at my face, and immediately understood the situation was worse than a simple break-in. Where is she? He asked. We don't know, but we think Linda took her. Linda's supposed to be locked up. House arrest, not jail, and apparently not very effective house arrest. Detective Rodriguez's radio crackled with updates. Units were checking hospitals, nursing homes, anywhere Linda might have taken Mom. But with a several-hour head start, she could be anywhere within a 200-mile radius. There's something else, Detective Rodriguez said. Linda's attorney posted her bail yesterday afternoon. $200,000 in cash. Where would Linda get that kind of money? Good question. We're looking into that. We spent the next 4 hours at the police station, making phone calls, reviewing security footage from traffic cameras, and trying to figure out where Linda might have taken Mom. Jason worked his computer magic, tracking Linda's credit cards, checking her social media, looking for any digital footprints that might lead us to Mom. At 6:30 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. Carol? It's me. Mom? Oh my God, where are you? Are you okay? I'm fine, sweetheart. A little shaken up, but fine. Where are you? That's complicated. I'm at Sunset Manor, the nursing home Linda had picked out for me. Sunset Manor, the high-end facility Linda had researched for her original plan. Are you hurt? Did she drug you? She tried to. Brought me some tea with something in it, but I've learned to be suspicious of unexpected tea offerings. Despite everything, I almost smiled. Mom was developing a sense of humor about being targeted for chemical manipulation. How did you get away? I didn't. I'm still here. What do you mean? I mean, Linda didn't kidnap me, Carol. I went with her voluntarily. The words didn't make sense. What? Linda called me around midnight, crying, saying she needed to see me. Said she had information about Marcus Webb that could help the other victims, but she was afraid to tell the police because she didn't trust them. Mom, that's exactly what someone planning to kidnap you would say. I know. But she also said Paul was planning to kill me to keep me from testifying. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Kill you? According to Linda, Paul figured out that the police were building a case against Marcus Webb based on my testimony and the evidence Jason found. She said he was planning to make my death look like an accident so the case would fall apart. And you believed her? I didn't know what to believe, but I figured if Linda was lying, I could handle her. If Paul was planning to kill me, I needed to know about it. So you went with her in the middle of the night to a nursing home? She said it was the only place she could think of where we could talk privately. Somewhere Paul wouldn't think to look for us. I looked at Detective Rodriguez, who was listening to every word. Her expression suggested this story was either completely brilliant or completely insane. Mom, where's Linda now? Talking to the police. She called them herself around 5 a.m. She what? She turned herself in. Told them everything about Marcus Webb's operation, about Paul's plan to kill me, about who's been funding her defense. Who's been funding her defense? Marcus Webb himself. He's been paying for high-end attorneys for all his clients who got caught, making sure they stay loyal and don't expose his operation. The pieces were starting to fit together. Webb had been protecting his business by protecting the people who could destroy it. But why would Linda turn against him now? Because she found out Paul wasn't just planning to kill me. He was planning to kill her too. That stopped me cold. What? Once I was dead and the case fell apart, Linda would be a liability. She knew too much about Webb's operation. Paul figured it would be easier to eliminate all the witnesses than to risk exposure. So Linda wasn't trying to kidnap you. She was trying to protect you. And herself. Let's not get too sentimental here. Fair point. Linda was still the person who'd tried to drug Mom and steal her house. But apparently, she drew the line at murder. What happens now? Now Linda cooperates fully with the investigation into Marcus Webb. She testifies against Paul and Dr. Peterson and whoever else was involved. And she probably goes to prison for a much shorter time than she would have otherwise. And you? I testify about what Linda told me about Paul's plan. I help put Marcus Webb out of business permanently. And I go home. Are you sure you're safe? Carol, I'm sitting in a nursing home with 6 police officers providing security while Linda gives her statement. I'm probably the safest 85-year-old woman in the state right now. 2 hours later, Mom walked out of Sunset Manor looking remarkably composed for someone who'd spent the night uncovering a murder plot. Linda walked out in handcuffs, but not the same defeated woman we'd seen in court. She looked relieved, like someone who'd finally stopped carrying a weight she couldn't handle. How are you doing? I asked Mom. Better than I expected. It turns out facing your fears is easier when your fears involve concrete threats from specific people rather than vague anxieties about aging and dependency. What do you mean? I mean, for the past year, I've been worried about losing my independence, my mental faculties, my ability to take care of myself. But last night, my problems were simple. Don't get murdered, help catch the bad guys, protect other elderly people from the same scheme. Simple problems? Simpler than existential dread, anyway. Mom had a point. Fighting specific enemies was more straightforward than fighting time and aging and the inevitable decline of physical and mental abilities. So what now? Now we finish what we started. We help Margaret Foster and James Chen get out of inappropriate placements. We make sure Marcus Webb spends a long time in prison. We prevent this from happening to other families. And Linda? Mom looked back at the police car where Linda sat waiting to be transported to the county jail. Linda made a choice last night. She chose protecting people over protecting herself. It doesn't undo the harm she caused, but it's a start. Are you going to forgive her? I'm going to work with her to clean up the mess she helped create. Forgiveness is a luxury we can discuss after justice is served. As we drove away from Sunset Manor, I realized something fundamental had changed in our family dynamic. 3 weeks ago, Mom had been a potential victim of Linda's scheme. Yesterday, she'd been a target for Paul's violence. But this morning, she was something else entirely. She was a woman who'd turned the tables on people who'd underestimated her strength. Linda had tried to make Mom into a helpless elderly person who needed to be managed. Instead, she'd discovered that Mom was still the formidable woman who'd raised 2 daughters, survived decades of marriage, and built a life on her own terms. Some people don't go quietly into nursing homes. Some people fight back. And some people win. 6 months later, I stood in the courtroom watching Marcus Webb get sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. The judge's words were crisp and unforgiving. "You preyed on the most vulnerable members of our society and destroyed families for profit. The court hopes this sentence sends a clear message that elder abuse will not be tolerated." Mom sat beside me, taking notes in a small notebook she'd brought specifically for this moment. Over the past months, she'd become something of an expert on elder law, patient advocacy, and the systemic failures that allowed people like Webb to operate. 15 years, she said quietly. He'll be 73 when he gets out. Poetic justice. He'll be exactly the demographic he spent years exploiting. Linda sat 3 rows ahead of us with her new attorney, a public defender this time, since Webb's money had disappeared along with his freedom. She'd received 3 years in a minimum security facility in exchange for her cooperation, which had been extensive and devastating to Webb's operation. After the sentencing, Linda approached us hesitantly. She looked different, thinner, older, but somehow more solid than the brittle woman who'd planned Mom's downfall. "Mom?" she said softly. "Linda." They looked at each other across 6 months of investigations, trials, and the slow process of untangling the damage Linda had helped create. "I wanted to thank you," Linda said. "For what?" "For not letting me become a murderer." It was a strange way to phrase gratitude, but it was accurate. If Mom hadn't gone with Linda that night, if Linda hadn't discovered Paul's plan to eliminate all the witnesses, she might have remained complicit in something much worse than fraud. "What will you do now?" Mom asked. "Report to prison next month. Serve my time. Try to figure out how to rebuild something resembling a life when I get out." "And Paul?" 25 years. Dr. Peterson got 10. The other accomplices got various sentences based on their level of involvement. Linda glanced around the courtroom, which was emptying as people moved on with their lives. "I know this doesn't fix anything," she said. "I know I destroyed our family and nearly destroyed you, but I wanted you to know that helping you stop Webb was the first good thing I've done in years." "It was," Mom agreed. "It doesn't erase the harm, but it was good. Will you—" Linda's voice broke slightly. "Will you write to me? In prison?" Mom considered the question for a long moment. "I'll write to you, but not as your mother, as someone who believes in redemption but not in forgetting consequences." Linda nodded, tears streaming down her face. "That's more than I deserve." "Yes, it is." Linda walked away to begin her own process of facing consequences and possibly finding a way back to being human. "How do you feel?" I asked Mom as we left the courthouse. "Like justice was served. Not perfect justice, but adequate justice." "And Linda?" "Linda is no longer my problem to solve. She's an adult woman who made adult choices and will face adult consequences." We drove to our final nursing home visit of the day. Over the past 6 months, we'd successfully helped 11 elderly people get released from inappropriate placements, return to their homes, or move to facilities they'd actually chosen. Margaret Foster was now living in a senior community she loved, with full control of her finances and regular visits from friends she'd made through our support group. James Chen had returned to his house and his crossword puzzles, plus a part-time teaching position at the university that kept him engaged with the world. Today, we were visiting Eleanor Patterson, whose case had been the most challenging because her son was a lawyer who'd used his professional knowledge to create an airtight guardianship arrangement. Eleanor was 91, sharp as a blade, and madder than hell about being locked in Peaceful Pines Manor against her will. "Dorothy Carroll," she greeted us with her usual regal bearing. "Do you have good news or bad news?" "Good news," Mom said, producing a thick envelope. "The appeals court overturned your son's guardianship. You're free to leave whenever you want." Eleanor's composure cracked for just a moment, and I saw the vulnerable woman underneath the fierce exterior. "When?" "Today, if you want. We've arranged temporary housing until you decide what you want to do long-term." "I want to go home." "Your son sold your house. Then I want to buy a new one." At 91, I don't have time to waste on rental properties. Eleanor Patterson packed her belongings with the efficiency of someone who'd been ready to leave for months. As we drove her to her temporary apartment, she sat in the back seat of Mom's car with a cat carrier containing the tabby she'd been secretly keeping in her nursing home room. "What will you do now?" she asked Mom. "Keep doing this. There are always more cases, more families affected by Marcus Webb's former clients, more elderly people who need advocates. And personally, what will Dorothy Wilson do for Dorothy Wilson?" Mom considered the question. "I'm thinking about selling my house." "Really?" This was the first I'd heard of it. "It's too big for one person, and the money could fund our advocacy work. I've been looking at a townhouse near downtown, walking distance to the courthouse and the legal aid office. You want to move closer to work? I want to move closer to purpose." That evening, Jason came over for dinner to celebrate Webb's sentencing and Eleanor's release. As we sat around Mom's dining room table, soon to be someone else's dining room table, I reflected on how much had changed since Linda's birthday party scheme. "Grandma," Jason said, "I got accepted to law school." "That's wonderful. When do you start?" "Fall semester. I'm going to specialize in elder law. Following in the family business? Someone needs to understand the legal system well enough to beat it when it's being used to hurt people." Mom reached across the table to squeeze his hand. "Your father would be proud." "I think so. I also think he'd be proud of what you and Mom have been doing. We're just trying to turn something terrible into something useful. You're doing more than that. You're making sure this doesn't happen to other families." After dinner, Mom and I sat on her back porch, looking out at the garden she'd been tending for 30 years. Soon, someone else would be planting tomatoes and pruning roses in this space. "Any regrets?" I asked. "About selling the house?" "No." "About Linda?" "That's more complicated." "How so?" "I regret that she thought stealing from me was easier than asking for help. I regret that she believed I cared more about money than about her well-being. I regret that our relationship deteriorated to the point where she saw me as an obstacle rather than a mother. But I don't regret stopping her. I don't regret the consequences she's facing. And I don't regret discovering that I'm stronger than anyone, including me, thought I was. You're 85 years old, and you're starting a new career. I'm 85 years old, and I finally know what I want to be when I grow up. The sun set behind the trees Mom had planted decades ago, casting long shadows across the yard where she'd raised her daughters, buried her husband, and planned what she thought would be a quiet retirement. Instead, Linda's betrayal had given her something unexpected, a second act with real meaning, real impact, and real satisfaction. 6 months ago, Linda had seen Mom as a problem to be solved, an elderly woman with too much money and too much independence. She'd tried to reduce Mom to a diagnosis, a dollar amount, a burden to be managed. But people aren't problems to be solved. They're human beings with dignity, agency, and the right to live their lives on their own terms, regardless of their age. Mom had proven that in the most dramatic way possible. She'd taken Linda's worst intentions and turned them into a force for justice. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's becoming someone better than your enemies ever imagined possible. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, getting older means getting stronger, not weaker. At 85, Mom had learned to fight harder, think sharper, and care deeper than she ever had before. Linda had tried to make her disappear. Instead, she'd helped her find her voice. Not a bad outcome for someone who was supposed to be past her prime. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.